sit in a movie theater and you'll watch Superman get beat up for, an hour, and you get it. But then, we talk about Christ and you don't even want to understand that story. Where do you think Superman comes from? He was a type of a Moses character, but who's Moses a type of biblically?
Right, we're good to go. How are you?
Doing pretty good, man. It's good to finally get to connect with you.
No,
Big
don't
fan.
worry about it. Well, thanks. Well, yeah, don't worry about it. I mean, yeah, thanks for reaching out and obviously give me a brief overview of what it is you do exactly. But this is your time really, and if you would like to maybe explain and introduce who you are, what it is you do, what your background is, and just what it is exactly you're working on, this is your chance to just give me your elevator pitch and your breakdown. Go for it.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. So yeah, my name's Terrell Turner. I am a storyboard artist and writer, and I live out here in Texas in the USA. I'm Christian as well, and I am working. I have a small LLC I've created, and I have a team, and we've been working on an anime inspired, if you will, show that kind of delves into not only like the story of Christ and redemption from sin, but also a lot of the more spiritual aspects of the struggle that we deal with as Christians in the world. And specifically, I'd reached out to you because I loved the theories that you put forth in the Nephilim were clowns. Uh, with all respect, I say it was one of the things that I saw where I was like, it's just crazy enough to work, to be true kind of thing. I'd never heard anything like that before. And when I saw you had so many videos and a book, I watched them and I read the book and I was like, this guy might be onto something. And so I think recently we've seen quite a right, an increase and overflow of people either coming to faith because of the terrible event that happened with Charlie Kirk, or just people being, coming to the grips with realizing there's more going on in the world here than just the material, and
Mm.
trying to understand where the spiritual connects with them. I think they're asking a lot more questions. And I've also been a big fan of Michael Heiser. I used to watch a lot of Chuck Missler growing up. I like Voddie Baucham and John MacArthur as well. But I thought what I like about them is that they have really good hermeneutics and an exegesis of the text, but a lot of them don't really talk about a lot more of the spiritual aspect.
Mm.
And growing up, I was a big fan of Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. Who wasn't? There's also a series by David Gemmell that I'm a really big fan of. It's like with Conovar. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of any of those books. Really, really great artist, like writer. In fact, I sometimes wonder why David Gemmell, he should be up there with Tolkien to me. His books are kind of like a retelling of almost Irish mythology and culture, but
Mm.
through his own books. So really, really great books. I like David Gemmell's books so much. Like I went and bought them all physically just because I think that's like a dying thing. And so anyway, the point is I think there's more going on in the spiritual world than we give credit for.
Mm.
And I look at I used to really love those types of books, and then I was reading the Bible. I was like, man, the Bible's got a really rich lore, and I can attach to the Bible the same appreciation I have for Star Wars lore or Lord of the Rings lore. And so that's what pushed me to start wanting to create more work that was edifying and that spoke to those convictions, and rather than just working within the Hollywood system. There's a lot of great people there working within it and doing good things, and some not doing so good things. But I wanted to do more edifying work, and so that's just a little bit about me.
Mm.
Um, the project I'm working on is called ZP or Zero Point, and it follows these three brothers, and they are one of them's kind of dealing with sin in a real physical form. um, and then that inspiration comes from the passage in Genesis where it says, sin, it's desired to have you, it crouches at the door. And so I kind of really started messing around in my mind, like, what would that look like to physically, to see that visually? And I feel like people back then would have had more of a connection to the spiritual, and they might have seen it. They might have had some way of like really visualizing it. And I mean, I think that even connects to a lot of your work I've seen in anime and in Western work artwork recently, where we're connecting with the spiritual in different ways. I don't know if you've ever heard of the show Jujutsu Kaisen.
That rings a bell, actually. I'm not a stranger to anime and animation in general. I have watched quite a few things in my over the years, but I won't call myself an expert anyway. And I'm
Sure,
bad
sure.
with remembering names and things like this. But continue anyway. Go ahead.
No, sure. Well, what's really interesting in that show is, they have this idea of curses, which, they're basically demons that are kind of impacting people and their what they're doing. And some people can't see them, and so they have to use different implements. Like there's someone who has glasses that have a specific film over them that allows her to see them. Other people, they're just more attuned to the spiritual nature of the world, and so they do a lot of things with that help people see those things. And so we accept the idea, as crazy it is, right, that there's these curses, as they call in the show, but they're really just demons that kind of go around and do a bunch of things. And in the show, there's even a main villain who's the king of all curses, but it's just the king of all demons. So a lot of that stuff really impacted what we're creating, along
Hmm.
with the connections that I really thought was interesting is in your book, right? How you really emphasize a lot of how the look, the aesthetic of the clown, how it moves about from culture to culture, and how we have a lot of the similar looks and feels. And you've probably, I don't know if you've heard or talked about this show, but Attack on Titan,
Yeah.
a lot of, yeah, one, they're titans, right? They're
Hmm.
giants, right? So boom, your Nephilim references. But there's a lot of ones in there where they're humanoid, but they've got these large gaping smiles, the big teeth, the eyes. And so it's very
Yeah.
clown-like. And
Exaggerated features tend to be the go-to. I've watched the entire anime. I've not read the manga, but I've watched the entire. I do know everything about that from start to finish. It turns out it's like a parasite that began the whole giantism situation, wasn't it? In their lore, there's a bit of a towards the end. It starts. It's nothing to do with spirits or demons or anything
right,
of the sorts, and it's a war between nations, isn't it? And isolation and the giants are actually weapons, and there's a specific race of people who have this infection that turn into the giants, and it gets the
right.
whole lore, this whole thing, and it's a big overarching revenge story as well, isn't it? But
Yeah,
aesthetically speaking, yeah. When it came to giants, especially in the early episodes where there was mystery around them, why are they killing us? Why are they here? What did we do? What's going on exactly? Yeah, they are these big, wide, grinning, big, bulging eyes, soulless looking, emotionless looking clown things. You know what I mean? Like they're just naked
yeah,
and silly. They move weird and disjointed, and they're very over. Again, the features are way over exaggerated from human features. Massive noses or like eyes or cheeks, and like they're just terrifying to behold.
yeah,
And when I first watched Attack on Titan, honestly, that I was engrossed. I was like, this is what it would be like to deal with
yeah,
giants. You know what I mean? Like, and it was horrifying. It was absolutely horrifying. Like, we wouldn't stand a chance. We would
yeah,
barely stand a chance. And even when they thought they were just getting like a fight back against these things, they just got killed horribly and heinously
yeah,
and hideously. It's just so brutal. Yeah, that was definitely an inspiration back in the early days. But yeah, but by that point, I had already kind of started my work in the
sure,
Nephilim
sure,
clown
sure.
realm, and I went on to watch Attack on Titan afterwards. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Because it seemed to fit that, and I can appreciate it as a story in its own right. Separate from my theory as well. But there is this.
absolutely.
There tends to be a theme in a lot of anime. And a lot of things coming out of the East in general, to be honest, that yeah, the demon aspect always has a big wide grin. That's a common thing I see quite a lot of, and like a psychedelic aspect to them in some way, a colorfulness in some way, or it, could you call that clownish? I don't know. Like I deal with repeat aesthetic patterns, and
Right.
this is all fiction. Do you know what I mean? To
Yeah.
me, these what I try and deal with is, well, what do we have from the cultures? What artwork did they make to represent these entities? What's the backstory they have for where these entities come from? What aesthetical similarities can we find across cultures when it comes to ancestor spirit worship? What costumes do they wear to channel the spirits? And that's
Sure.
where you start to see the repeat pattern. That's where you really start to see the costumes, the looks, the designs have a lot of similarities, but just different materials, because every culture has their own way of doing things. But if you scrape away the details like that and just stick to aesthetical similarities, it's always the same. White
Yeah.
ashen skin, big red wide lips, mouth grins, large bulging eyes, prominent brow ridge, crazy wild red or multicolored hair, and multicolored costumes covered in diamonds or colored patterns or ribbons or something of the sorts. That's a clown
Right.
costume. Okay, that's what
Yeah.
we call a clown costume, and it's because they did have those features. And I think anime does tend to play a lot on that style when it comes to demons. And I think the East in general have a very rich, deep heritage connection to the spirit realm. I think they have intimately linked with just demons and their culture in general. They kind of understand the spiritualism behind it and shamanism as well. And kind of they have the stories of dragons. It's ingrained into Chinese culture, for example, the four dragons mythos, you know, and the Jade Emperor. And it's just their culture. I think they're seeped in it, and it comes through their work. And I think with the Christianization aspect, that kind of got added to anime in the future, like
Yeah.
as time went on. I think they maintained a lot of that occult gnostic-y worldview to demons, but gave this Christian layer over it in the anime. You know what I mean? Which kind of, it's always like we can defeat the demons through like worldly means, certain
Sure.
guns or weapons, or we can use magic to fight against dark magic. And that's a lot of what anime seems to be hinging on, a very gnostic, mystic Christianity, shall we say. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
noticed the same thing. I'll give the ball back to you on that one, but that's my observations.
Yeah, no, I think you're true, and you're honest on that. And I think, right, you delve into the um, what's nonfiction and what's real. What do we have evidence for physically in our world? And I think too, it just makes me when I look at creative content, it goes back to the question we all have is like, where do those ideas come from? Most of my creative content, anything I draw comes from the library of knowledge that I've put together over the years. But also there are things that are just true to story that you knew before time, right? You knew before even you were around, just work. Um, and there's a lot of books that go into that, even like the hero's journey, right? There's just certain things that
Mm.
work and it doesn't matter what you say or what you do. And I think a lot of those traditions are even within our animation now, especially as we open up to more of the spiritual world. It's because we're pulling things from that. And yeah, I knew from that you hadn't pulled anything from that, but it was something where I read your book and then I started going through my mind, what things have I seen that's like how I test things, right? It's, I'm like, what things have I seen that show this hold true? And just thinking about content in many different media, whether it's American, just regular film, books and stories, and how a lot of the characteristics just continue multiple times. Even in that show, right? I've read, I'm sure you have as well, just the early stuff within. I've only read the first book, but within like the Book of Enoch, it talks about the giant, the Nephilim being tall, like these giants, and then they devoured people. After they devoured everything that they could eat for them, they just started eating the people, you know.
Mm.
And so when we see this show, the horror that it is to be a person, to see a giant and then to eat it, I think there might be something um personal that we all call back to that. Just like the way we look at snakes, right? The way we look at certain things, it's innate. And so there's a lot of things that we don't know why did Attack on Titan take off globally, right? It
Mm.
wasn't just in Japan. There's millions of anime. There's anime if you want to watch a show about a man who becomes a vending machine, or a show about a Yakuza guy dad that, you know, quits the Yakuza and just becomes a stay-at-home dad. There's a show for that. There's things like that. But then there's this show where it's the entire world watched Attack on Titan,
Oh yeah, you could feel it, couldn't you? There was something like just watching it, I was like, this pulls me in personally. Like it feels personal. I don't know why. Like, and it
yeah,
was good
yeah,
storytelling as well. The good
sure,
character
for
world
sure.
building and everything about it. The lore was interesting, but it was specifically just about the thought of how would humanity fare against giants realistically,
Yeah.
and it was hopeless. It was truly hopeless, and it's kind of as someone who kind of understood a bit of Enoch, the lore, Christianity, and the Nephilim. It's like seeing that played out in the anime.
Yeah.
It felt horrible to behold, and it gave me a true sense of just how bad things would have got pre-flood. So for me, yeah, religious wise, and biblical history wise, it was a very useful piece of artwork, I would say, to give good context, to put yourself into the shoes of the people who would have lived during a time where giants were around. It was
Sure.
no picnic. It was probably the worst possible thing you could imagine for everybody involved. And I think that's
Yeah.
why it spoke to us. Maybe there is like a deep rooted in our DNA core memory collectively of being prey for
Yeah.
predators. That's not something humans are used to. It's not really something we're used to. And I think it's left that mark on us to those features, big, huge mouths, big
Hmm.
eyes. Something about that is like it's uncanny to us. It makes us recoil naturally. And like I said, when clowns, and I think that's why there's an unprecedented fear of clowns in
Yeah.
civilization,
Yeah.
which is again why
Yeah.
when you really think about it, these things for children. But when you actually understand where those features come from, what they're an echo of, or at least I call a caricature of from the Western viewpoint. This is deep rooted. It's like I said, like it's a predator response. It's how we respond to snakes or spiders or things that can kill us very easily. When we see those features, we do recoil, and yeah. So I'm glad my work in some ways is inspired you. So let's come back to you and your projects here. So,
Sure.
what did you used to work on? I'm guessing from the narrative you've split off from your previous work and started your own independent company to create something more biblically based, shall we say. But what's your background here? What have you worked on? What kind of things were you creating prior to starting your own endeavor here?
Sure. I previously worked at DreamWorks. I've also worked at Paramount/Nickelodeon. Paramount kind of owns them. But I've been on Kung Fu Panda, Rugrats. I've also worked on their show. The first season is kind of out now, called Max and the Midnights. I was on the second season. I've also done a lot of like side work. I've helped out on some other indie projects. There's one called Insectopia that I've kind of helped out. That's being shopped around right now. But also worked on a show called Star Trek Prodigy. Um, so yeah, I have experience working personally within animation, and then a lot of the people who are on my team have also split off from animation, and even some from gaming, doing concept work there, and they all had the same feeling. We were working in a field where we were making things, but we always really wanted to make things that were more aligned with our faith, and our view of the world. And I don't know, we went through a period where, you would see things and people didn't like them. There's that thing everyone knows about, like Elio, for instance, where, the first draft of it, people watched it and they said it wasn't something they'd watch. And my heart goes out to those creators, because that hasn't happened to me yet, but I'd hate to be on something I've been working on for a number of years and come to the realization that I wouldn't watch this with my family or my friends, or I wouldn't even share this with people. But it's a project my name's on, and now people are going to watch. And so um, when I went through interviewing everyone who I interviewed to work with, my main thing was saying, hey, I'm a Christian. This is the point of the studio. We want to tell edifying stories. We're not we're not aiming towards any specific demographic or any specific voice. It's like I want to tell something that's more timeless, like how I feel Lord of the Rings was before, Amazon, you could say, got their hands on it, or even how
Mm.
Star Wars. I loved those movies growing up. I never was questioning what's here or what's not there. It was more so you're watching a person go through a story. And it's the same thing when you're reading the Bible. And I think a big problem today is people, they read any book or watch anything and they're like, what about me? And
Mm.
the to me at least, if I look at a character and their skin doesn't look like mine, that's the last thing I care about. I should be able, I watch Spider-Man and connect with his character in the movies because he's a kid who's trying to do the best he can, and life is
Mm.
constantly getting on top of him. It's he's trying to manage his rent, he's trying to manage his girlfriend, he's trying to manage just being a person, and then he also has these struggles. That's what you connect to. And I think people have forgotten that with our stories of today, and that's why I mean, there's a lot of things that have come out. You're probably in the same boat where it's I see the trailer and I know instantly this has nothing to do with me, and I don't want to watch it.
Mm.
But I also don't want to be told that I need to watch it because um, it's not something that to me is something I want to be into. But I just don't like the back and forth that's going there. So everyone in the studio feels the same. We really want to create stories that people can watch, connect with the character's journey. Um, I don't care if they look like you or not. It should be, hey, I want to see the end of this story. And
Mm.
that's our focus first. And I think especially after what recently took place, I think more of the team felt galvanized and inspired to be like, we're probably in the right place. We're not working, it's not a gut reaction of what took place. But even after that, there's been a lot more enthusiasm because people feel like they don't want their voices um, to be stopped, to be cut off like that one was before its time, and they wanted to be like, people feel more like, what, this is just what I believe, regardless of whether you agree with it or not, and I'm not going to hide it anymore. And I think, and there was quite a bit of that, I think, um, where people didn't felt like that. I mean, there's a lot of people who are Christian, I would say, within the industry as a whole, but there's a lot more vocal minority who aren't. And so you kind of weren't really talking about it. You just
Mm.
go to work and hear alternate opinions and views and just have to be okay with it. And most people, are just great people. They just want to do their job, go in, get out, and get their paycheck. Um, but we've seen recently how pushing specific narratives, making other people feel like I don't know, they're responsible for other people's sins is really strange, especially since that's even biblical, right? God says, I believe in the Old Testament, it's like no one's responsible for their father's sins. Um, and yet, I'm supposed to look at my neighbor and say, well, your descendants did this, and now I hate you. I don't think that's how it works. So
Mm.
yeah, we're really against that, and we want to focus on what's really important. It's just telling that story, and that's what led us into creating what we've been working on and what we've created, and being true to that more so into um, being as biblically aligned as possible. And that's why I really liked, again, that's why I really liked your book. I felt like you were asking questions that no one's really brought up, and I've known people I've never done it, but they've done the ayahuasca. My whole thing was, I don't want to get myself in anything that will keep me up at night in that way.
Mm.
So I've had friends who've done that, and the way they described what they were seeing, I'm reading the book and I'm like, wow, like that's kind of what they're seeing. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there's a lot in there that I know you've done your research. And what I've really liked about it is that it's helping make me do more research in that direction when I'm looking at designs for things. Because I'm like, okay, I see how in African tribes or in the designs of the dragons in the East, I can see how or the yokai in Japan, like there's a strong connection for all these things, and there's a
Hmm.
precedence for it. And I think most kids don't even like clowns, man. If I'm honest with you,
No, no, they don't. They don't. The studies are in, man. They like 9 out of 10 children do not like clowns, and
yeah,
that one kid who does, he's just a weirdo who cares about him. You know what I mean? He's nuts.
yeah,
It's like that's not the rule. He's an outlier. You know, the rule is yeah, children don't like clowns, so why are they marketed towards them? And then when you understand the secret society aspect to all of this, where the clown actually comes from in the Western civilized world, how it's just an amalgam image of Eastern and African and Australian, all sorts of cultures, kind of images of serpent hybrids, human serpent hybrids, and it's just our version of the same thing, literally copied from the Rakshasas of India, which again is the same thing, you know, and
yeah,
particularly one that's on a temple in Thailand, it seems like was seen and copied and pasted into British theatre. It's really
yeah,
odd, you know, I didn't expect it to be so deep when I first started looking into it. It's just one of those, like, one thing after another, and you look at the people involved, you follow the receipts, you read the memoirs, and it's like, yeah, they did this. They actually did
Mhm.
this, you know, and it is literally modeled after demons. Doesn't
Yeah,
It's not even like I'm just saying that. I'm like, that's what they
right,
did. That's actually where it comes from. Clowns in the West have never been anything but a representation of a demon. They have always been that from their very inception. And it's not actually hidden. You were never told.
right.
That's it's by omission, you know. That's where the deception kind of came in. And I'm going back here just to Christian law in general, you know, and I do feel like there is a disconnect from the modern world. From the younger generations, they don't really have a way to connect to Christianity. Like it's an alien concept to them. How does a man being nailed to a piece of wood do it have anything to do with me and me being bad and my sins? What does that even mean, being saved? And they struggle to contextualize it because they're not living in a world that's spiritual. They're not living in a world that understands, well, even their true history. The history's a
Sure.
lie. They're following a complete timeline that doesn't actually exist, as far as I'm concerned, you know. And they don't really know where they come from or who they are and what humanity actually went through. And they understand this concept like mythology. And that
Mhm.
was where like people made up stories to explain phenomena they couldn't understand, or there was like we make stories about superheroes today. That's what they were doing then. You know, it's the same thing, and they have this a lot of like millennials, let's say, and maybe some Gen X as well, and below, they just don't understand Christianity and they don't understand the history of it. They don't really understand the Genesis is like a boring book about people wandering through the desert or something. they
Right.
don't they don't really understand it. It's like, well, it's just what's that got to do? Like some guy on a boat and a flood, like. What, you know, why would God kill all those people? What was the point? Why even do all that? And it's like they have in their mind like God's like a genocidal maniac who just did things for no reason whatsoever, killed millions of people, sent a flood, you know, and it's kind of didn't he make people to begin with? So isn't it his fault like that they were bad? Like, isn't it's they just have these basic ideas and they don't really think about it because there's no way to bridge that connection to it. That's I realized that as somebody who came from that world, you know, and I too had those struggles and those issues. But when you actually research the lore of the Watchers, the Nephilim, the pre-flood world, what was actually happening in that time, what building up to the flood scenario, what happened after the flood, what Nimrod
Mhm.
was doing, and all of it comes together, and you realize this is like the greatest story ever told. This is like the most epic movie you could ever watch. This is insane on many levels and grounded in the histories and mythologies of every other culture on Earth. They're all telling the same story, just with different names. And
Right.
they picked the wrong side, usually, as well. So they have their own glorification of the wrong creatures, you know what I mean? Because they were on the Nephilim side, culturally speaking, you know, whether they were deceived into it or not, or lied to, which seems to be the case most of the time. But like when you actually understand these stories and these narratives, and I try to lay them out in my book, I feel like it opens that door to the younger generation finally, especially a
Yes.
generation who enjoys like animation and movies and anime. It's kind of like you like that story, get a load of this story. You know what I mean? And it is a
Yeah.
story. It's a story that needs to be told that I don't feel has been put together into like a one narrative yet that people can just follow as a movie. You know, with
Yeah.
everyone's seen The Passion. of Christ, like the story of Christ's crucifixion in the Gospels replayed in movie format. Everyone's watched like stories of Solomon and his courts and all these type of things, but no one's ever really told the real story of the beginning through to
Right.
the flood, post flood to now. Like no one's told that entire narrative in like one setting in one movie. Truly, we've got snippet little bits, screenshots here with manipulations and omissions and lies and twists and all sorts of things. But if people could just know that story, it brings the Bible to life.
Yeah.
Finally, I get it. I get where we are, why we're here, what's going on, the war we're involved with, what it means to be saved, why Christ had to do what he did, why God did what he did in the Old Testament. All the questions get answered so quickly. And I'm excited to hear if you have any plans to tell this story. Like, what's going on here exactly? What do you think about all this?
No, I agree with you. I think it's Nietzsche, right, who says you can tell the character of a man by how much truth he can take. And I think if you will, like the infantilization of the current generation or the younger generation is part of this problem is they don't have the character yet where there's no nuance, right? It's just this person's bad, this person's evil, right? I don't
Hmm.
want to hear what's happening, and there's a large cognitive dissonance with that where it's for example, right, there's to me, if you really don't like something, right, I think you follow it to the nth degree. So if I, for instance, didn't like Donald Trump or whoever, I don't want help from them at all, right? So if Trump's sending me checks for free money, I don't want his money. I want to be able to sit back and say, I didn't accept nothing from you because I don't like you, right? Um, where there's a lot of people, it's like they will, they hate something to an nth degree, but they'll still accept the things from it. But then there's also the dissonance of people who will say things like, "Oh, I think we'll just say historically," and and people will probably hate me for saying, but it's like, "Oh, you know, white people are responsible for slavery," and then you're like, "Oh, well, there were the English that helped end slavery." And they don't want to hear that part. They just want to, blame this. And so there's that weird thing where there's no one wants the full story, right? They kind of like what they've been told. And
Hmm.
I think part of that's even the TikTok part of it, right? And TikTok gives you 5 seconds. It will give some person a history, and they take that and they go, huh. And that's all the questions they ever asked. And it just takes a little bit of extra research to go and open a book or to, like you're saying, to peel back those layers, and you start to see there's a lot more nuance and connections than you're aware of. If you just go
Hmm.
on surface value, you should be asking yourself like, what's really happening here, like you do with the clowns. And I think you see how all those things are connected through time. And you need to do that. They need to do it with the Bible as well. If you like, we will sit in a movie theater and you'll watch Superman get beat up for, an hour. And you get it. But then, we talk about Christ and you don't even want to understand that story. It's where do you think Superman comes from? I know he was a type of a Moses character, but who's Moses a type of biblically? He's a type of
Hmm.
Christ. And so a lot of the stories we're in with today, we're all looking, it's just a savior. That's everyone's looking for that. And that's why we like those things. And so you have the ultimate savior story. And I think it's frightening for a lot of people. I think it's you have the ultimate good who did who took on all your sin, and you're feeble, not feeble, but you're just human nature initially to that. Like someone did something above and beyond for me is absolute terror because you can never repay that. And the Christian's like, absolutely, now you act in accordance to your thankfulness for that and you accept it. And I think that the difference is the people who they don't want to accept that and they kind of move from there. And I think, and that's sad, and I think that's why, that's obvious. That's why even, Christ started speaking in parables because he wanted people to be judged on knowing less, whereas if he's going in and he makes comments on that, right? Of the more you're kind of aware of and you still turn away, the more you're punished. And so, I think it's really hard for people to accept something so positive, so good when they live in the material that the world that we live in.
Mm.
And yeah, that's unfortunate because it's the greatest story ever told. And I think that even when it comes to a lot of the ideas you kind of came to in your book, even with Michael Heiser, who I've read a lot of as well. Which again, reading his stuff, reading your stuff, I see there's a lot of connections to, why a lot of the things you guys are saying make sense. I think for even, if you will, Christians who need to take that step and at least reading it, it's that feeling of we believe in the most miraculous miracle in the Bible, which is Christ coming on the cross, dying for your sins so that you may have a relationship with him. And he's born to a virgin. We believe all of those things, but then someone starts talking about the Nephilim and clowns, and we're like, huh? Really? The most amazing thing we already believe in already happened. So to
Mm.
me, when I hear some of these other things, I'm like, the truth is a lot of times stranger than fiction, and we really don't know. We think we know more than people back in the day, but we don't. We just look at our phones and it tells us what to do or it gives us information. We don't actually have anything to back up like our own skills. And
Mm.
I see with like the infusion of AI and stuff today, there's a lot less of people using their own brain power. They just accept what you're told. And my fear is even when I've used AI the few times that I have, like, how do maybe in this case I know the answer is correct. A couple years from now, how will I know? And that's why like I like having things physically. Like I've got your book, I've got other books where I have them physically at my desk. I can pick it up, I can read it
Mm.
at least up to this year this was published. I know it's not going to change from moment to moment. Whereas, with the AI and whoever's controlling that, my fear is you've got people who are just going to accept just whatever it gives them at face value. And so I think embracing that idea that you don't know everything and that some things need to be further studied. Just
Yeah.
like the Bible talks about, to have that relationship with Christ. It's not just you asking for things, it's you wanting to know who he is. That's why you pick up the Bible. That's learning who he is picking up the Bible, reading and learning about him. And I feel like these other avenues has had just made me want to read the Bible more. Um,
Hmm.
Not just accepting what Paul says or Heiser says or this person. It's like now I need to go back, read the scripture, see if there's connections there. And
Yeah.
when there are, I'm like, all right, great. If there aren't, then I'm still in the word. So I haven't lost anything. And so I think a lot of this stuff has just made me want to read even more. And I would say I don't know if we'd call it a revival by that specific way, but there has been a lot of people with a revived faith that I've spoken to as of recently, and are interested in the story that we want to tell, and we're really really excited to start sharing more for it. And that's something that I'll be sharing with you and posting online more as time goes on. Like we have our page, we have our LinkedIn, we have some social stuff set up, but we've really been using the time that we've had to grind and create something and build the world that we kind of see,
Mm.
and make it something where people are going to want to start peeling back those layers as well and see, well, they're saying this, that's scripture, and the Christians will know. The layman won't, but I hope just like in like Chronicles of Narnia, at least when I first read it, I didn't know Chronicles of Narnia was based on the Bible at all. I just thought it's a really fun story about these four kids and Aslan. And then of course as I got older I realized, oh, okay. And then even knowing that that's happening during World War II even like changed my mind on a lot of things as well. Because I'm like, wow, that's an interesting that's why, they're kind of whisked away at different things. So um a lot of the themes in those stories were taken from the Bible with a lot of characters representing biblical characters, but It was something that your mind, that you didn't realize was happening, but your brain did that
Hmm.
entire time. And that's what we want to do with these stories. We want to talk about those concepts of the spirit, of what sin is, of the spiritual aspect of the world, and how we as material beings in this current form, at least, how we, interact with it. So
Yeah, it's a hard story to tell and explain
yeah.
that kind of situation as somebody who's tried to on ad nauseum explain spiritual concepts or the spirituality to people from like an ex psychedelic perspective, you know.
Mm,
And like I said, you see some things, you experience some stuff, and it's unfortunately words or small mouth noises are very limited in the capacity to explain that, but art isn't. Art can portray and explain things visually in a way that words just simply can't. So I'm looking forward to see how you're going to tackle that in your future projects. I really am. I mean, it's. I like the idea, like you said, that you subtly are putting Christian ideas and concepts and verses and words into a story that, from the layman's perspective, wouldn't recognize it as Christian immediately, because it's not overtly saying, you know, just reading scriptures, people and quoting the passages and so forth, you know. And I tend to do that in my own work, like online, like when I speak, I say Christian phrases or passages from the Bible, but I'm using them in a conversational style, not saying that the Bible says this. I don't
right.
preface anything I say with it, you know. And if I find that has brought people closer in a way who were perhaps not Christians or don't really understand the word more so than just hitting them over the head with scriptures and saying this verse, that verse. It's more like let them hear the word in context being spoken. Don't just tell them what the word is.
Sure.
It's like a difference, you know what I mean? I feel like that's kind of the method you're going to apply there in a way. Can you give us any like behind the scenes hints at what your story is going to be about? Maybe like a little bit here and there, or are you keeping it tight? Are we not leaking any information yet? How's anything at all?
Oh, yeah, no, no, I can. And I like what you were saying there because we all know there's been a lot of media that's done that with their opinion of the world, right? And so
Hmm.
we should be just as um vocal with sharing those things. And then, like you're saying, I really like what you said because it reminds me even of kind of how Christ teaches, right? He's in he's in there with the people, right? Most of the times when you read, it's like he's at this party and the Pharisees are like, why are you with these people? And it's like that's your demographic, that's the battlefield, is the people who aren't necessarily believers. And so that's why I love anime, and there's a lot of people who, there are a lot of believers who love anime as well, but don't have an outlet for edifying content. It's just whatever they kind of see, and so they'll have that with us. And yeah, I get the main aspects of the story is it's these three brothers. One of them kind of goes missing, so the two youngest are headed out to go find him, and the youngest is currently dealing with his sin. And he can see it in like a physical manifestation, but no one else can. And it's told in kind of a pre-cyberpunk future world. We're on the verge of this new technology. We're on the verge of these big changes to the way we do things, kind of much like how we are now with AI,
Hmm.
where people are trying to figure out where they fit in it. And in the show, he's dealing with not only this sin that's following him around, but he's figuring out, what does the sin say about him, that he has it. And so working with his brother, they're looking for their oldest brother as he's dealing with this, we call it the wake within the show. So the sin is called the wake, and it's just something where he hears whispers, and every so often, there's like a thought that'll pop in his head that's not entirely his own, but it's not a good one, it's not a positive one. And then also how um these things can be in your environment. There's this constant battle, right? Whether you're aware of it or not, that's constantly happening. I think about Job for a lot in the story. So the characters eventually will reconnect, but what have they lost and what have they gained through this journey? And so there's gonna be a lot of talk in there about just the struggle, about family, um, about relationships. There's going to be fights, there's going to be battles and stuff like that. But I would put the idea of it around, or the inspiration, like Cowboy Bebop mixed with kind of like Avatar: the Last Airbender, in terms of like the deep rich themes that are in it. So I'm excited to really share more with it. We're planning in October to really start sharing a lot more with it. We have the logo done. We have a lot of things already completed. Sorry about that. But yeah, that's kind of I don't want to give away too much, but
No,
that's
of
where we
course.
start. So yeah, if you like anime, if you like any of those deeply thought out shows where you can kind of watch them more than once to understand some of the unique themes behind the characters, if you like cyberpunk vibes as well, and really good music, that's where we're headed with this show, and those are the stories that we're going to be telling with these characters. So right now, our full show, at least to tell the full story, it's going to be about 3 seasons. So nothing too crazy long, but we really want to make sure this first season, um, and especially the first episode, really gets people excited and really shows them what Christian content can be. Because that's another aspect, and you talked about it a bit. I know you've talked about it with other episodes I've seen that you've done, but there's this view of Christian content as, either a bunch of people in a circle singing Kumbaya, our lives are perfect, everyone else is, whatever, or Veggie Tales. there's no
Yeah.
there's no in between. Or it's even in, and I like those things. It's just retellings. It's, like the Chosen, which is great, and there's people who like the Chosen. They get to, they're learning about Christ that way, and then they go and read the Bible, and hopefully it causes them to read more. But there's this view that our content can only be those three different things. And so
Mm.
we really wanted to say, hey, there are a lot of really um, talented Christian artists, writers, composers who've been working on other popular shows that haven't had really that outlet to tell a biblical story, and so we're bringing that to the landscape. So now, if you're a Christian, you can come in and say, I want to watch like an anime. You weren't able to do that and find anything very specific. There might be a few outliners, but this will be something that at least people can put their thumb on and know, okay, like this is something that speaks to me. It's edifying, but it's also not making the world either a child's playground of, where everyone's good and positive. And we're not going to shy away from seeing the world as we see it now, right? It's a
Mm.
place where there is danger. It's a place where there are really malevolent figures and entities out there, and not just, pray because everything, the world's fine. It's pray because there's a real battle out there, and people are struggling, and people are really hurting, and why is it important to do those things? So we want to touch.
Absolutely. I think it's good to hear that there are more Christian creators these days who are confident now to come out and actually say, I'm a Christian, this is what I do, this is what I'm making, this is why I want to do it, without the fear of repercussion or being judged or called crazy. Or because there are still those people, I get the comments all the time, who want to just kind of die cast you as just a typical stereotypical superstitious crazy person who believes in something that isn't real, the proper fedora tipping atheist types, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're still out there, but I think their voice, their bark has no bite anymore. It's like, yeah, shut up, who cares? Say those things. It doesn't. We still believe what we believe. We're still going to do what we do. And I think more people are coming out now confident. I mean, I just saw recently blowing up on Instagram. There's this young British rapper. I can't remember his name right now. But he's making Christian rap music, and it's fire. It's great. It's like incredible, like, and it's got everything that you need to get the people to listen: the beat, the catch, the hooks, everything, And he's just basically just laying out Christ and like the war we're in, and the devil, and how he's just not going to go along with what everyone else in his generation is doing. It's inspiring, It's kind of like, wow, this was unheard of like 10 years ago, even prior to that, this type of style. But I think that is happening now. I think perhaps as a counter to just the complete spiritlessness, shall we say. I don't know how to describe it. Like just we've been dead spiritually as a culture for at least like 3 decades, I would say. It's just Christianity's took a back burner completely, especially after the 60s revolution, up until now. I think it's just that half a century of complete just nihilism has run its course. I think the silent majority, which is people who believe in God and Christ, who are in these civilizations, are not letting that loud minority you mentioned earlier anymore just roll over us. I think a lot of people are standing up saying, you know what, no, Christ deserves better than this. Like, why should we be quiet? We know where we come from. We know what the truth is. We know where we stand, and everyone else should know too. And you are like another example of this. I feel like I'm seeing a lot more of this. People stepping away from the world and saying, we're going to do what we need to do. We're going to do what we believe. We're going to say what we want to say without fear of that repercussion. Did you sense that feeling as well happening in like the industry you're in? Because the industry you're in now isn't really known for capitulating to Christian ideals or high moral standards with creations and anime. It isn't really typically. Any media or entertainment industry these days is generally turning out pretty terrible things, So it's as an insider, am I talking absolute nonsense here, or do you feel that energy, that shift in perspective? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It was always something where you would talk to someone and you found out you would hear them say something, just like you were saying earlier, you would be talking and they would say something and you're like, oh, this person's a Christian, right? Like that's a biblical comment you just made, or you know, I found it even interesting when something would happen and people would say like, well, God bless you, right? Like that would be unheard of in like the company the company chats, and you'd be like, oh, I think this person might be Christian. And so I felt like, obviously there was a sense of like an underground aspect, and you're kind of you're getting together with the Christians. You're like, oh, like this guy's a Christian. I didn't know that. Oh, this guy. And there's a lot of them. And so I think that there's a lot. I think you're right. I think there are a lot more people feeling very, they're galvanized. They're no longer wanting to just the worst has already happened with Christ now, right? And I think there was a period of time where everyone was lulled into a false sense of security, especially in the United States, right? Like with our closest enemy is ourselves. And so when you have what you have happened, it was like, wake up, Christian, where are you right now? Are you going as far as you could? Instead of where people were, where it was just, everything's fine. The worst that's going to happen is someone's not going to like me. And it's like, no, like we've just seen, that is not the worst that could happen. But even in that, there is glory, and there is hope. And so I think more people are just less afraid. They're like, well, if they're gonna get someone who's just going to colleges and talking, then they can get me. And so why even slow down on that? And so yeah, the immediate outpour when I first was getting started and I reached out, and I said, hey, here's the project, this is what I'm working on. I would say within, the first 2 hours I had 500 people applying. I had to remove the job posting because I was overwhelmed. And but everyone who I've been interviewing with and speaking with has said the exact same thing. They're like, I want to do something that edifies and speaks to my faith, and I haven't done it, and I've been waiting for a moment to make that jump, and I didn't know how, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're seeing this as an opportunity to do it. And I think now even more so, there's going to be people who are feeling like what am I doing? You know, I think, I think that's the question when you look at the Bible and you're thinking of your fruits, like what am I doing? Obviously, there are some fruits that come from being a good father or a husband or friend and things like that. But then, people are like, I want to do more. How could I do more? And so, um, that's that's what happened. It's sad what happened, but it's really made people remember again that they could do more and and that this life is precious, it's short,
Mm,
and you have no idea what could happen and when, and to be thankful for what time you have. Um, and it doesn't take that much, but someone with a microphone someplace, or just even like in this, two people have a conversation about what they believe, when before it felt like such a jump, like who am I to do that or to say that or to like have those conversations. I'll leave it, to the other people out in the world to do. And it's a good thing that more people are like, I've got talent, maybe I don't have a voice for debate, but I can draw, I can write,
mm.
I can compose, and so that's where I'll let it speak.
Absolutely. So, just out of curiosity, this is just
Sure.
me picking your brains, trying to figure out how this industry kind of works. But how do you fund something like this, like a separate project, especially a Christian project? Is this more like a GoFundMe situation? Do you have external people who are investing into the business, or do you have how does a project like this get like off the floor? Really, I'm just
Sure,
curious.
sure. Yeah, so it of course starts with a crazy person with a dream. And like a good cast behind you. But next is, yeah, is looking into funding. I looked into funding from just personal banks. There are actually a lot of we have like an angel network in Texas where you can post your idea and say, hey, this is what we're wanting to do. This is what we want to create. And it's completely anonymous for the investors. So they can check out your idea, see who you are, see what you're trying to make, and then make the decision for themselves to invest or to donate to what you're creating. And so, I mean, we would never turn down any investors who, people who really want to help, right? Because another thing to kind of touch on that we've, as a team, have talked about is making sure when we look at investors, who do we accept investments from, and what's the paperwork around it? Because there are some
Hmm.
deals where it's like, hey, we'll give you this much money, but we want 15% control, or we want this much control over your project. And so it's like, we just came from that, right? We came from a place where stories are constantly changed or updated or rearranged after the fact to fit someone else's narrative, and we don't want that to happen. And so yeah, there's grants through Texas that we're working through as well,
Hmm.
that can help indie creators get off the ground and work. But even with those funds and things, it's a lot of grease, elbow grease, and dedication. There's people who we have some people on the team who, I mean, they're fast, man. Like we'll have a model of something that someone will draw up, and then in like 2, 3 days time, they're like, here it is, a 3D model of it. And we're like, wow. And then there's been a lot of people who have just donated their time, who are just like, this is the only avenue for this that I can be in, and I want to help. And so we've been living off of all of those things put together and then some. And we really have appreciated just people wanting to be a part of it, like with skills and different avenues and aspects, and saying, I'm gonna, I'm a producer, or I'm a one of our guys is like an FX artist, and I saw what he was doing, and I was like, what would it cost to do an FX, like a screen opening or a title card for our show? Because I know he's super talented. And I told him about our project, and he goes, nothing, don't worry about it. I just want to do it. I just want to help. So that's been really inspiring as well, because
Hmm.
these are industry professionals. These are people who are used to getting, pretty big paychecks for doing this kind of work and who are like knocking it out on a weekend just out of pure inspiration and desire to, glorify God in any way they can and be helpful because they've never had that option. So
Amen to that. That's amazing. Yeah. So it
yeah.
sounds like what you need is being provided as and when it needs to be provided for. If I can help in any way promote this and get people on board, you leave me any links or anything where people can donate or help in any way, and let's see if we can't use this network and this channel for some good to help further other Christian brothers and sisters out there working towards building something edifying, because it is dark out there, and my channel does cover quite some dark things, and we get into the nitty gritty of everything, but I think stories like yours are really what it's all about. This is what it is all about. We're trying to inspire new people and new generations with the word and the truth. And sometimes it takes an anime or clowns to get them there. And I understand that. So
Yeah.
yeah, if I can help in any way, just let me know what I can do. Leave me any links, and anybody listening to this right now, make sure to go and support Terrell and the whole team. Where can they find your work? What websites do they have available? What's your company called? And we'll round this off now for a nice hour, I think.
Oh yes. Our studio is called Mod Studios. You can go to our website, modstudios.net. Once it's fully published, I'll share with you like our Kickstarter page. But yeah, you can go on there now and you can buy us a coffee. Or you can leave a comment. Even if it's you just reaching out saying you're curious about what we're doing and just want to be updated with it as we move the project along. That's awesome. Any encouragement is really, really helpful. And yeah, it's just been really a blessing, man. Just to get this far, we've been able to do in such a short period of time, and even to get in contact with you. I reached out to four people at one point, and this was probably the most excited one I was to reach out to. So to see that even you were like, yeah, I'll talk to you about it. That's it's amazing. It's a blessing, and God, works through really through anyone and through anything. And so, and we exercise a lot of clarity, and truth. And so anything that anyone shares with us, anything that's donated to us, it's like we tell you exactly what it'll be used for and to who it goes to. Because again, we want to make sure when people know that we're saying we're making edifying content to further the kingdom, we mean that. It's not about the money for us. It's not about necessarily even the industry to a whole. It's about giving and helping shepherd that next generation and to help out there. And I think that that's what we need more of and less of, the studio's already doing it in the big way. They're already, you can buy your movie tickets and do all your things through them and they'll apply the money as they see fit and do it. But here we really want it to be something where and the same with my team. They know everything that's happening behind the scenes, anything that I'm up to, and I want them to be a part of that. I don't want it to be like I'm in the trenches too. I'm drawing with them and I'm working on the project, and we meet weekly on Wednesdays just to talk about where everyone is and see what's going. So it's all glass windows because, our hope is not in Terrell having all the answers or, the money that comes in or doesn't come in. It's in Christ and it's in God. And we'd be drawing and doing this stuff even if we didn't have that. So I really appreciate you just giving that, me and the team and this project, this platform and this opportunity.
No problem. Like I said, why do I even have this platform if I can't do something like this? That's the point of it all. So yeah, Terrell, just leave me any links at all. Anything you want me to share. If you also want to send me any concept art or
Sure.
pictures or anything I can show while we're talking, that'll be
Yeah.
wonderful. And obviously the people listening can get a good insight into the type of themes and artworks and things you'll be showing and showcasing through your company. But this has been a great talk. Stay in touch. I really appreciate it. And we'll definitely speak soon. Yeah.
Sounds good.